Hello, my name is Kerrioth, and today we're going to talk about Eisenhorn and I guess a misconception from some players whereby they have a belief that special characters should be more powerful on the tabletop than their rules suggest, and we're going to go into why they're not, basically. Before we do that, I just want to say thank you very much for being patient with me over the last few days. I know I haven't uploaded for a couple of days. I basically took your advice. On the last video I uploaded last Thursday, where I sounded like I was on the verge of collapsing and dying, an overwhelming number of you essentially told me to fuck off and get some rest. So I did as you suggested, and I fucked off and I got some rest, and as you can probably hear, it was absolutely worth doing, and I probably should have done it sooner. Going forward, I hate using that phrase, I don't know why I said it. For the moment, what I'll probably do is, I'll try and do a video a day again, and if I wake up feeling awful, then I just won't do a video that day, because I need to actually properly get better and not just ignore it, because that clearly wasn't working. So things will hopefully be back to normal. If not, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. It's just a short break so I can actually get rid of the whole pneumonia thing. Anyway, let's get on to the actual topic of the day's video, shall we? That is Inquisitor Eisenhorn. Now, I know his rules have been leaked for a couple of days now, or at least they've been available for a couple of days. But really, we're just going to take a quick look at the rules to set us up for the conversation afterwards. So, let's have a quick look at him. This is from Fayette212, naftka.blogspot. whatever. And to be honest, rules don't seem too bad. So, Eisenhorn, movement 6 inches, weapon skill 3+, blitz skill 3+, strength 3, toughness 3, wounds 5, 4 attacks, leadership 10, 4+ save. He comes with an artificial bolt pistol, which is 12-inch range, obviously pistol type, strength 4, AP -1, damage 2. Now, I think I know how to pronounce this. Barbarissator, I think is how you pronounce that. I could be totally wrong. Strength is user, AP -3, damage D3, and add 1 to hit rolls for this weapon. So whilst he is weapon skill 3+, Barbarissator kind of makes him weapon skill 2+. So that's cool. And Rune Staff would be +3, -1, D3 damage. And he's got the Electro Bane grenades, which are range 6 inches, grenade obviously, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1. If the target is a vehicle, and you roll a wound roll of 4+ for this weapon, the target suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to the normal damage, or D3 mortal wounds if the wound roll was 6+. Funky, cool. Okay, so we have his abilities as well. So, Quarry, Authority, Inquisition. Have a look at Index Imperium 2, which I'm not going to do that right now. Unquestionable Wisdom. All friendly Imperium units within 6 inches of Inquisitor Eisenhorn can use his leadership characteristic instead of their own. No stranger to pain. Roll a d6 each time Eisenhorn loses a wound. On his 6th, that wound is not lost. Excellent, so he's basically not feeling no pain. Malus Codiceum. Once per battle at the start of any turn, Eisenhorn can use the Malus Codiceum. If he does so, he loses his Unquestionable Wisdom ability for the remainder of the battle, but you can immediately set up a demon host anywhere on the battlefield that was in 6 inches of Eisenhorn and more than 1 inch from any enemy models. This demon host has the character keyword, and his strength, toughness, wounds and attack characteristics are all increased by 2, so it's like a badass demon host. Furthermore, whilst this demon host remains within 6 inches of Inquisitor Eisenhorn, add 1 to hit rolls, wound rolls, and invulnerable saving throws made for it. If Eisenhorn is slain, this demon host is removed as a casualty as well. If you're playing a match game, you must pay reinforcement points for this demon host, which is reasonable. Finally, he's a Psyker, can manifest 2 psychic powers in each friendly psychic phase, and attempt to deny 2 psychic powers in each enemy psychic phase. He knows Smite and 2 psychic powers from the Telethesia discipline. Okay, so those are his rules. I will also link to them down below so you can look at them a bit longer. To be honest, they seem okay. They seem not massively over the top, whilst also not being massively weak. And this is where I think, in a way, the problem comes in when we look at significant characters in the 40k universe, because I've already seen people talking about Eisenhorn as though he's too weak for who he is, as though he's too weak for what he is. There were similar comments made about Slime Marbo as well with his rules. But actually, they're kind of examples of an overall issue when you look at the tabletop game versus the lore for Warhammer 40k, and the kind of, not underpowering, but the way that characters, special characters, are handled on the tabletop. It's not just these newer characters or characters that get in newer rule sets that have this thing of not being as good as they might seem from their books or just from fluff or the lore or whatever. It actually has been a problem for ages that Games Workshop kind of need to work around. Because on the surface of it, yes, you would expect Eisenhorn to be stronger than that. You would kind of expect it. He's an exceptional person in every sense of the word. In a universe full of exceptional people, he is undeniably kind of a cut above most of them. But at the same time, he's also a relatively normal human being. He might be really good at what he does, but he's going to have to suffer the same problems as any other human being if he gets, for instance, shot in the face with something. And it's that kind of balancing between the badassery of the fluff and the functionality of the tabletop that Games Workshop kind of has to deal with, which is why we see characters like Eisenhorn, like Sly Marbo, even when you look at older characters. If you look at, like, Khaldor Drago, for instance, if you are going purely by fluff, if you're going purely by what has been written about him in the lore, the dude is essentially a one-man army. He got banished to the warp and has spent, every second of every minute since killing demons by himself. Occasionally he gets summoned back into the real world, where he immediately murders everything, and then he gets sent back. In terms of actual power, Drago is insanely up there. He's way over the top. He's completely OP in the fluff. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, his first act of combat was to kill a demon prince. And yet, if you made him as over the top, as insane as he is in his own fluff, he would necessarily have to cost the same as an entire army to play him on the tabletop. He would also have to have stats that are above and beyond pretty much anything else, because, well, it's Drago. He's massively, stupidly strong. There's also the fact that, actually, when you look at what Games Workshop say about, like, Black Library, it's canon, but it can also be exaggerated. It can also be an account that, whilst that thing did happen, maybe it didn't quite happen in that way. Maybe it's not written quite as events actually turned out. Maybe there's some embellishment going on. Maybe someone is made out to be far better than they actually are. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily the case for every single person in the fluff, but it's something to consider when you think about the conversion of power levels in fluff versus power levels on the tabletop. If you look at a lot of special characters, not just Drago, but I mean, God, there's a lot of special characters, let's be honest. If you look at people like Dante, if you look at people like Logan Grimnar, hell, if you look at Mephiston, Lord of Death, he is, I mean, obviously, these are characters that are pretty fucking beastly on the tabletop as well. It's not like they're weak, they're not shit, they're not just like idiots, they're not just going to fall over at the first sign of an enemy. But at the same time, in the Devastation of Baal, that book had Mephiston drop out the back of a Thunderhawk, fly ahead of the Thunderhawk, essentially just butchering waves of Tyranids as he flew, just by psychic might alone. And then he flew back into the Thunderhawk and was like, yes, let's go and banish your demon. Let's be reasonable here. You cannot have that on the tabletop. You cannot do that. You know, all of the Imperium's heroes, in fact, all of Chaos's heroes, I guess, if you want to phrase it that way, and every other race, like, besides, they are truly larger than life. They're even larger than life in terms of Warhammer 40k being larger than life. They are beyond exceptional in comparison to people who are already exceptional beings in an exceptional universe. You can't just stick them on the tabletop at the same level that they're at in the books, in the floor, in the fluff, in the lore, in the codexes, whatever. You can't do that because you would end up with characters that are so obscenely overpowered. I mean, Dante can die on the tabletop. He can absolutely die on the tabletop. Anything can die on the tabletop. But Dante is also over 1,000 years old. So if you're going on previous experience, if you're going on previous battles, the way that he has managed to not only survive as long as he has, but become the leader that he has become, the idea of him dying in some no-name battle on some backwater world is laughable. It would never happen. But it has to be possible. It has to be something that happens on the tabletop. There has to be a point where Dante gets overpowered and killed. Because otherwise, you would be able to just go into any game you liked, go, okay, here's Logan Grimnar, and then the other person would go, oh well, I'm going to have to lose then, because if you compare books, if you compare lore to this game, well, obviously he'd win this fight, he'd win this battle. Even if he was wounded, he'd still win. The actual correlation between in-game power and in-lore power, there almost isn't any. If you actually look at what these characters are and what they can do, there's very little in the way of crossover in terms of how strong they are. Yeah, they're good. They are, some of them, absolute freight trains of pain when you get them on the tabletop. Just like they are in the books. But in the tabletop, they can still die. They can still get wrecked. They can still have some random, no-name traitor guardsman get a lucky hit with a bayonet or something that wipes them out. But that would never happen in the books. It's an interesting thing for me to kind of see reactions to special characters and their rules, because some people kind of say, oh well, this is overpowered. This character is too good. For what they are, they're way too good on the tabletop. A lot of the time, no, they are good on the tabletop, but for what they are, they're still not as good as they should be if their actual strength is being portrayed accurately. With other characters, it's the opposite way round, where people kind of go, oh well, they should be way better on the tabletop. Maybe, but they still can't be as powerful as they actually should be if you're looking at their backstory. Just something I've been thinking about, basically, since these rules came out and since we saw Slime Arbo. It's an interesting kind of, it's just an interesting crossover of lore and mechanics, where it's one of the few bits of 40k, I think, where actual kind of established characters, although they obviously do fit in on the tabletop, they're just not quite what they should be, and it's by necessity. Question is, well, two things. What do you think of Eisenhorn's rules? Do you think he is strong enough? Do you think he is good enough? Or do you think he's a bit weak for what he is? And secondly, do you think that what I've said is in any way, shape or form correct? That you do have to essentially nerf these characters to have them playable, or they'd just be too strong for everybody and everything? Be interested to hear what you think about this. I think it's an interesting discussion to have. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. As always, there's various links all over the screen you can click, Patreon, subscribe, videos, all of that stuff. With any luck, this will continue, and I will see you tomorrow for the next video. You watch me not be able to make one tomorrow. I'll see you as soon as I make another one. Toodaloo.